Hey Gooners, this is Alan Smith.
This is Kevin Campbell.
Lee Dixon.
Colin Lewin.
It's Gary Lewin.
Charles Watts.
Dan Potts.
James Benge.
Danny.
Tom from the Gooner Talk here.
Ryan O'Cross.
Simon Collins. You may know me from the Evening Standard.
You may know me for my time at Arsenal.
You may know me from Arsenal or even the Hybrid Squad.
I'm a Birdcat Wonderland.
Being that physio sat on the bench next to Arsenal with my rubber gloves on.
The former Arsenal physio.
The Emirates press box, from writing, from Twitter.
From goal.com, from Twitter, from YouTube.
Football is the beautiful game and it brings us all together.
Sometimes there are things even more important than wins and losses.
And yes, even transfers.
Every 30 seconds, someone in this world gets diagnosed with blood cancer.
The Leukemia and Lymphoma Society works towards curing blood cancers
and provides support to families currently dealing with these diseases.
Gooners vs Cancer was started in 2017
by a lifelong Gooner who lost his father to leukemia way too young.
Since 2017, Gooners v Cancer has raised
over $75,000 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
And we need your help to keep the fundraising going in this year's campaign.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
No matter the size.
And every donation enters you into the Gooner raffle,
where you have a great chance to win amazing Arsenal prizes,
including game tickets, stadium tours,
signed men and women's shirts,
and maybe a retro signed shirt by yours truly, Lee Dixon.
Me, yours truly.
Yours truly, Super Kev Campbell.
So much more.
It's easy to take part.
Just go to www.goonersvcancer.com
and donate directly to the charity.
Pick the raffle prizes you want to enter to win,
and wait for the drawings at the end of the campaign.
Again, that's www.goonersversuscancer.com.
We all know that victory grows out of harmony.
Victory grows out of harmony.
Victory grows out of harmony.
With your help, we'll be victorious against blood cancer once and for all.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for your support.
Thanks for your support.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you for your support.
All right. So as we go into the next hour, we first bring in a new co-host for me. Not new, but for the pod. Eoin, fantastic to see you. How you been?
Not too bad, buddy. Yeah, how you going? It's what, hour 6 now, is it? Your early stages, you're not even struggling yet.
No, I haven't even had to have my first Diet Red Bull or anything like that yet. But you've got a different background now. You're not sitting in front of that. What was that art? The piece of art that you had behind you for a while?
The giraffes and Thierry Henry, and there are a few different ones. Of course, new house. This is
what do you have? What do you have against giraffes and Thierry Henry? Oh, that's right. It's the new house.
All right. So you might realize that I'm sweating. It's so warm here, man. I'm
telling you. Hot. People laughed at me when I said, when we get the flat in Highbury, I want to get aircon installed. But I mean, it's these kinds of weeks that you've been having that. I mean, if I was over there, I'd be dying right now. I can't sleep when it's warm outside. But we've got a great hour coming up. It's going to be fantastic. We now have both guests who are here, so we're going to bring them right on and get right into it. And let me just get organized here a little bit. But our next guest, we have two more great guests, both joining us for the first time. So let's get right into the introductions. First, he is a man who bleeds Arsenal. He puts an incredible amount of his time, effort, and energy into his fandom, into his support, and in his role into ensuring accountability and communication between the club itself and its supporters in his role on the board of the Arsenal Supporters Trust. I'm pleased to consider this man a friend as well, and have enjoyed spending a lot of time with you over the last few months. Welcome to the podcast, Akhil Vyas.
Wow, what an intro. I think, Mike, I'm going to take you everywhere with me. You can do the intro every time.
I'll wear a clock around myself and be your Flavor Flav. I know you're too young to get that reference, but I'll be your Flavor Flav. It's great to have you. And the man who is now next to him, who Akhil kindly introduced me to at an event last month that we will spend some time talking about. He's written about both club and international football in England for The Independent, The Daily Telegraph, and currently serves as the head football writer for The Times. A very warm welcome to the Gooners Podcast, Podathon, to Henry Winter. Thanks for joining us, Henry.
Hi, guys. Thanks for inviting me. It's brilliant what you're doing, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm enjoying it. And what makes it brilliant is the people that for whatever reason, I'm able to sucker onto, to coming onto the podcast. So I totally appreciate it.
I just want to echo that too, Mike, actually, because like when you invited me, it was like 1:30 in the morning in the UK. I think you even said like reply tomorrow, don't worry. But my son had just woken up, so I was in a little bit of it was a little bit of a dazzle.
We're going to discuss why he woke up or not.
Well, did a massive poo. Massive Tottenham, shall we say? Yeah, that's not I don't know what he ate at nursery that day, but it was, I just thought it was just a bit of a podcast. I didn't realise the amount of work that goes into it. I looked into it about 10 minutes ago as I was waiting, and honestly, there's a lot of work that goes into this. So absolutely fair play to you, and I'm glad. And I'm sure Henry is the same. I'm glad we can play a very, very small part in it.
Well, it's a privilege, and yeah, it's a lot of work. But as it's going along, I mean, there's nothing more fun than talking to great people and doing great things to raise money for a great cause. So, speaking of that, a little bit of quick housekeeping. Shout out to the chat. There's 110 of you in live chat right now. I appreciate that. And we are raising money for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society through Gooners v. Cancer. At the bottom of the screen is a scroll that will tell you how to donate, where you can go. You can win prizes. We have something in the order of about 21 prize draws remaining. We've done 4 already. We do one at the end of each segment, and you can donate. You can contribute to a nice cause. It's tax deductible where that's allowable by law. And we hope that you'll do that, and that you'll keep watching us on the podcast. So we have so far raised during the Pod-A-Thon itself and the week leading up to it, we have raised $9,565, which and so we're getting really close to that $10,000 number. We appreciate it, and we're absolutely smashing our goals right now. So let's get right into it. For all 4 of us, there's a number that means something important, and it's the number 35, strangely enough. For me, that's the number of years ago I first stepped onto the terraces of the North Bank and fell in love with Arsenal Football Club. Henry, I believe that's about how long you've been writing about football professionally. I don't want to age you, but somewhere in the mid-30s?
Yeah, unfortunately, you might need to stick a 0 on the end of that.
Well, maybe it just feels that way, but no, 35. And then for Akhil, you were born 35 years ago, right?
Yeah, I had to check that. I thought I was 34, but yeah, you're right. I'm 35. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe you hadn't had your birthday this year, but yeah,
No, I have. No, it's fine.
Well, Eoin just likes Alexander Zinchenko, so that's why that's why 35 is important to him. But recently, Henry, we learned that 2 Arsenal players, Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard, were voted onto the 467-person shortlist for the Ballon d'Or. And of course, as was mentioned earlier in the podcast by Jules Laurens and Gab Marcotti, they mentioned, well, the Ballon d'Or voter, deservedly so, in the UK is Henry Winter. So we're really pleased to have you on here. You might not be able to tell us who's going to win or even who you voted for, but I mean, do you happen to know, and if Bukayo's going to win it? I mean, can we?
I know nothing. I can't talk about it. It's funny. It's this time of the year I get rung up by particularly French newspapers. In fact, loads of newspapers that say who's playing well at the moment. You can't. I mean, it's just where we're all incredibly privileged is the football that we're seeing, and as you say, 35 years. I mean, the depth of talent that you're seeing now, the quality of football, slightly allied to the quality of the pitches. The academy strength, Hale End, Akhil and I've talked about sort of Hale End, the quality coming through there. Wherever you go, there's fabulous talent. At the moment, I've just sort of pulled in at home because I'm midway between Poland and Glasgow covering England. And you look at this England squad, and obviously you guys will talk about Bukayo Saka quite rightly as a starting player for England. But you look at Jude Bellingham, there's so many of these, Phil Foden, there's so many of these fabulous talents. So just from a sort of broadening perspective and ducking your question completely, dropping a shoulder in a very sort of aged way, we're just privileged just to do this job and to see this great football, whether football fans, football journalists. It is a I think it's a golden age. There are obviously so many issues, and Akhil does brilliant work in terms of just leading the fight against the European Super League, against changes in kickoff times. I was talking to some Everton fans on the flight, and obviously when you talk to Everton fans, they've got loads of issues. But hasn't their game against you guys been moved?
Moved from
and they were talking about, and one of them was saying, "Well, listen, I'm a sort of reasonably successful businessman, and this is costing me a lot of money. And so what's it then going to mean to, sort of other people who haven't got that sort of money?" So, and Akhil does brilliantly on that. And yeah, Akhil, my sort of support for all the supporters trust in the country, and the AST do fantastic work. So, but I do think it's a golden age in terms of the football that we're seeing. When I came in, it was the year after Heysel. And it was grim. There were people walking out of grounds just having been beaten up, the violence, and just, domestically and internationally. And to see this football now and to celebrate a player of Saka's quality, of Bellingham's quality, and it'd be nice if Southgate played him in the right position. And also, and there's so many good young players coming through. So, yeah, we're lucky to do what we do. So I hope I got out of your rather searching question.
Well, no.
Can I jump in and just ask a question of that, Henry? Which is, this year more so than years past, you've touched on some of the players there that we're very lucky to watch, even coming from rival sides like Foden, Bellingham, Saka. To me, when I see the nominations list this year, what jumps out to me is the youthfulness of that list in comparison to maybe decades gone past. What is it about nowadays, about today's game, that it seems to be players in their early 20s are the ones thriving in the spotlight rather than players maybe in the twilight years of their career like we've seen before?
It's an emboldened generation. You see, say, the way how Marcus Rashford took on Boris Johnson and skewed him like a sort of reserve team fullback over child food poverty. You look at the way that Raheem Sterling and Danny Rose and others, Bukayo Saka, have used their social media platforms for good. I just think it's a quite sort of not arrogant generation, but a confident generation. Vinicius Jr., the way he stood up against racism. I really like this generation. Every generation is like snooty about the generation before and says they don't work hard enough, they haven't got our values. But actually, I think this England generation, and credit to Southgate and the academy system, there are no dickheads in it, if I can use the all black phrase. And that is fantastic. And so they've got this dedication. You take someone like Bellingham. I mean, he's a colossus of a footballer. If you've seen him in action, but not only is he a fabulous player, he's also a really good human being as well. So I just think there is this, maybe it's the academies, maybe it's parenting, whatever it is, they're this just confluence of forces that are producing these players. And it's interesting when you talk to them, because clubs often want content, their own content. Arsenal want their own content. Tottenham want their own content. And they actually want the players pretty much just to talk to them or give them the big interviews. But actually, this generation, they will DM you. If I get something wrong, I'll get a message from a player. I think it's brilliant. I love the way they're speaking out. They're speaking out of racism. They're speaking out on Rubiales, the idiot in the Spanish FA. I think they're a fantastic generation. So I can't remember what your question was, but so on the youth, I think the youth is, again, it's the academies, and also from a domestic perspective, credit to Gareth Southgate, because 11, 12 years ago, he went around the countries, went around the old school counties and said, it's not about trophies. It is about developing Spanish style players who can play smaller sided pitch, don't have some little kid in a shirt that's too big for him, standing underneath the goalpost that's that high. Let's develop it. And we are seeing the fruits of that, including with EPPP and the academies.
It's interesting that you bring up Southgate, and I want to continue on that trend. But I just real quick, can anyone remember the last time we had two Ballon d'Or shortlisters on Arsenal at the same time? I have the answer to this, but I had to look it up because I couldn't remember.
Henri Bergkamp?
No, the last time
Alexis Bezet.
No, actually, they weren't on this well, at least not during a year where they played the entire year for Arsenal. But 2009, Cesc and surprisingly Andre Arshavin were both on the short list. So it's a bit of a purple patch now to have two on there. And frankly, I think next year, if they keep playing the way that they are, we might have a third, which is William Saliba join us. But back to Southgate, Clive Palmer, beloved Clive Palmer, who was on hour 2 of the Pod-A-Thon, says, let's talk about Southgate. And this sounds like a compliment, but then it's a backhanded compliment in the sense that when you stay too long, it's natural to have people around you like. To me, actually, I don't think that's a compliment. I think it's pretty clear that his team selection, now you're giving him a lot of credit for certain things, but he's not getting that from many other people when it comes to the England setup right now. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'm his biggest critic, so I think when we go into press conferences, I'm almost on the sort of the naughty step. I've got huge admiration for Southgate because he's changed the culture of England. The players like to report. You saw it with Jack Grealish, you saw it Trent Alexander-Arnold early in the week. What are we, Sunday? Sorry, last week. They still, even though they're injured, they still reported St George's Park because they wanted to be part of that. The cliques have gone. There isn't an Arsenal table, a Manchester United, Liverpool table. I remember talking to Stephen Gerrard once, and he was absolutely convinced when he reported for England duty the first time that Gary Neville was going to be hiding behind a potted plant in reception, was going to ambush him. And I said, "You're joking." And he said, "Well, no, there was that sort of atmosphere. There's, the tension between the clubs." South, because he's got a very collegiate character, has sort of embraced that again with all the the issues of the things that he's done in terms of the England age groups. They're playing double the amount of matches. They're building up relationships. They're winning the under-19s. They're winning the under-21s. All of that is a great sort of confidence. My issue with Southgate, and it has been from 10 minutes into the second half against Italy in the Euro 2020 final, when Mancini just reacted quicker and Southgate didn't change his midfield, is that those key moments, the big managers react, and he doesn't do that. And so I've sort of I'm not a Southgate out because I don't see anyone who can come in. And also the players to a man, they respect Southgate. But yeah, I just think it would just be the biggest shame in the sort of 30 odd years that I've been covering England if this generation of good people, good players, and not simply the quality, but the quantity, it's phenomenal, the depth. I mean, how many good right backs you got? Obviously, there are issues at centre half. You could argue Ramsdale's a good number 2. You probably say it's a number 1, but there's an element of strength in depth there. There is no obvious understudy to Harry Maguire. Now Mason Green won't play for England again. So there are individual issues, but England got strength in depth. Having said that, having looked at the French bench yesterday, they will probably get to the quarterfinals with their second string. So yeah, I just think Southgate, I don't think he's got the killer instinct when it counts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just going to jump in, Akhil, and throw one over to yourself. Obviously, somebody that's been called up this time round is Eddie Nketiah. For somebody who was on the peripherals of Arsenal, many people thinking that he wasn't up to the level to even play at Arsenal. And now for him to be receiving the recognition for the performances of late to play for England and hopefully be handed his debut. How impressive is that for that sort of redemption arc that he's been on?
Yeah, I think that's obviously great. I think it's great for every young player in the country to know that form does matter. We've talked a lot about Harry Maguire, Jordan Henderson over the last couple of weeks, but I mean, to see someone like Eddie get in on current form, Eddie's played really well this season. Obviously, Gabriel Jesus has been injured, but if I look at that performance at Palace, I thought he was brilliant. I thought, he was obviously brilliant at Man United as well. So I think that's great. It's always going to be interesting. I think the first squad is potentially the easier one to get into. It's can you then sustain it? If you look at obviously someone like Bukayo Saka and Aaron Ramsdale, they obviously have. But we've had players get in and haven't quite sustained it. Emil Smith-Rowe, for example, went back a level. Ainsley Maitland-Niles, was in the England squad for a while and then wasn't even in the Arsenal squad. So I think it's all about sustaining it for Eddie. I don't think he's going to get sort of over. He's not going to get overexcited by this. I think he knows that this is probably a very nice week or two for him, but he'll know he's got a battle when he gets back to London Colney because Gabriel Jesus is fit again and he showed it in the last minute against Man United. So I don't think Eddie's going to get too ahead of himself. But I think, of course, it's years of work. He made his debut 2016, 17 against Norwich when he came on and turned the game under Arsene Wenger. It's been a long journey for him, on loan at places like Leeds and got sent back as well and stuff like that. So he's had a long journey, so absolutely fair play to him. And just quickly on Southgate, you were saying, obviously I'm an Arsenal fan, but I'm also an England fan. And I think what's really just slightly frustrating me about Gareth Southgate is in those pivotal moments, as Henry said, it just hasn't gone for it. You think, when one up against Italy, home crowd, Wembley, we had more in there than we should have had there, but it was very much a massive home crowd. We just sat back, and you just, as the game went on, you just felt that there's an equaliser coming. And then in the last tournament against France, I think our boy Bukayo Saka had just gone and won a penalty, and then he got taken off kind of minutes later, and you thought, he's the one player who looks like he's making things happen. He's absolutely. I mean, if I was that fullback that night for France, I would have thought, oh, thank God for that. Thank God Bukayo Saka's gone off, because I can now just take a little bit of a breather. So I just think, potentially Gareth was going for, a 1-1, take it into kind of extra time and stuff like that, but I just felt leave Saka on that pitch, because actually he can create you something. And unfortunately, Olivier Giroud went and scored the goal to knock us out. So it's just that little moments right at the end, just a little bit of steel, a little bit of bottle. Easy for me to say. I don't have the pressure of managing a country, there, or a club, or anyone. But it's just in those pivotal moments you just think, we were that close, just a little bit more. But
if I can add on Nketiah, a few of us spoke to him at St George's Park earlier in the week. I'd never spoken to him before. I didn't know sort of too much. I knew about his backstory, leaving Chelsea and all that, and the sacrifices that his parents made, and him going out on loan and the Thierry Henry connection and all that. But I'd never sort of spoken to him before, and I was really impressed with him. In fact, I was so impressed, I actually sent a text to someone quite high up at the club and just said, your player's come to England and done himself, his family, and the club proud. The way he spoke, he didn't duck any question. He spoke with insight, quite humorously at some points, particularly when he was talking about sort of Thierry Henry's number. And I was really impressed with him. And I mean, it's no real importance impressing me. But then if someone comes over as a good character, that's going to impress Southgate. And that, in terms of his longevity with the squad, Akhil's right. He's got to prove himself. But I actually think of that, he takes 3 centre forwards to Germany. Callum Wilson will go as number 2, probably Ollie Watkins. But, I think there is a possibility of a position up for grabs.
Yeah, and Eddie, I can echo what you say. I mean, it's pretty rare that I have the opportunity to say, well, yes, I actually spoke to Eddie Nketiah in a media setting before Henry Winter did, but last summer when they came for the U.S. tour, not this past one, but the one before that, I was credentialed and had an opportunity to interview him in the mix zone after the game in Orlando. And I was interviewing him about the game in Baltimore, really, because he was just embraced by the American supporters, chanting his name, really rooting for the guy. And I asked him kind of how he enjoys playing in the States and whether the support. And he, like you said, he comes across as a real humble, hardworking, not one to get discouraged or start yelling that he deserves a starting spot on some teams and deserves minutes like certain other people that some of our supporters would have chosen to keep over him, but we recently sold. But the character, I mean, that's why he's an Arsenal player. Character, hard work, and that's what Mikel Arteta and they do are putting together at our club, are players with that kind of thing. And it's weird, but it's interesting to see this question going back to Southgate. Is Southgate's desire for a culture the thing that keeps Ben White out of the squad? And I'm guessing, knowing Dave, that he's talking about the fact that Ben White's always very outward about how he really doesn't care about football. It's a job for him rather than a passion. Do you think that has anything to do with it, or are there other football
with Ben White?
Yeah.
I find it, and we have this. We talked to Southgate about this. We don't really get a satisfactory answer. We think, is there anything to do with what happened in Qatar, the fact that he came home? And then you look, because we always have this debate with Southgate. Southgate always says he picks on form. And you go, well, why is Harry Maguire in there? And then probably the most informed wide player in the country with respect to Bukayo Saka was probably Raheem Sterling, certainly in the first 3 games of Chelsea's season, and he's not in the squad. So there's a hole in Southgate's argument there. And then you look at the centre halves. Maguire, okay, played right side. Ben White has just been consistently outstanding at right back. Right back, right centre half, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't understand the sort of Thomas Partey move at right back, because I thought it broke up, which was what a very successful, that sort of triangle of Saka, Odegaard and Ben White. There's a real instinctive understanding there. It was one of the Arsenal strengths last season. And I thought with Gabriel sort of fitting, well, Saliba and Gabriel's a good combination. I just think he's a good player. So look, if I picked an England squad, there were probably 72 people in it. And Southgate always slightly rolls his eyes when we say, why is so-and-so missing? He said, well, I can only take 26, 27. But I just think that I don't understand. I would love to give you an answer on Ben White, but I don't understand, because it's football-wise, he should be in there. Yeah, but I don't know any other reasons why not. People talk about he's not passionate about the game, but if he's
do you want to win tournaments, or do you want? Yeah, I mean, they at some point, it's not like he's a bad guy who's a good player, and you have a moral debate about whether to play him. He's that can't be a reason to keep him out of the squad. And I just wanted to point out, thank you to Per Jensen, listening to my instructions from earlier very, very well. Instead of super chatting, he has donated to Gooners v Cancer, as so many of you have. And so thank you for the question, which I received right in the midst of Henry answering it. So we are we're a predictive show here. We know what you're going to ask before you ask it.
I have a question for you, Mike. You said you had credentials to get into the press last tour, but you didn't say if you did this tour. So what did you do to get this credentials removed?
My credentials were not removed. I was credentialed on this tour. I was not credentialed in DC because the MLS ran those, and frankly, I had. I'm going to make you feel bad now. I was so busy raising money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society that it would have taken away from that to go to press conferences. But I did. I was on the.
I was just thinking. I mean, you weren't in New York either, because you were in the coach with me in front of me.
Yes, and I would not have been media appropriate in that situation with my son
Henry,
yelling at me.
Mike was me probably 5-6 years ago on that coach.
Right. Exactly.
7 pints in.
With my 19-year-old yelling at me and rolling his eyes, but yeah, no, it just there wasn't enough room in the days to do all those things. But I did get a question in from Mikel and Gabby Jesus in the Los Angeles press conference, so I kept my streak alive.
I was just being smart.
No, I know, because I should have had my credentials revoked after my phone alarm went off in front of Unai Emery and Granit Xhaka back in 2019. But if I didn't get them revoked for that, I don't know what I will. So. Henry, I wanted to ask you about 2 issues that you wrote about recently. One of them is Arsenal related and the other is not. Shockingly, in hour 6 of the podcast, we have yet to really go into much detail on this. So I'm glad to give you the ability to do so. But you've written about Declan Rice and his impact on the club, both before and after his game-winning goal a week ago against United. I mean, I think it's plain to see his impact, but from your perspective, what is the potential and the upside of this transfer and what it could end up meaning for Arsenal over the months and years to come?
You've got 3 players there. You've got someone who can shield the back 4. You've got someone who can develop into an 8, and you've also got a natural leader and someone who he's such a warm, outgoing person. I mean, I probably interviewed him 2-3 times for one-on-one. And look, just one. I'm not really telling tales out of school here, but with. He was at West Ham's training ground, and we had a sort of like it was during COVID. We had a sort of half an hour chat, and then he said, "Do you mind if I go now, because I need to." There was a traffic issue, and he needed to get home to the other side of London. And he said, "I will contact you when I get home, and then we'll resume the Zoom." And I said, "Sure." I mean, we talked for 25 minutes. 25 minutes with Declan Rice, because he's such a good talker, and you could probably use about 95% of his quotes. It's all it's JFK level of quality. And he and then an hour later he called. He said he found a quiet room. He had an England shirt behind him, and he talked. He is just so funny. He's so popular. I think if him and Grealish are probably the 2 most popular players in the England squad. And he's naturally warm. He's funny. He's an outstanding footballer. He's a leader. You can see how he cares, and he cares on the pitch. He cares about his teammates. He hasn't really got an ego as such, But he's strong. And again, I don't think I probably am telling tales out of school, but I wrote a critical piece about him and sort of tweeted as well when he had a go at the referee, and it was caught behind the scenes. The camera probably shouldn't have been rolling behind the scenes in one of the European games, and he had a go at the referee. And I just thought that Declan was a little bit above that, and he pulled me in the sort of backstage at West Ham, the London Stadium, and he said, "I saw what you wrote, sort of blah blah blah," and we just sort of, I expressed my position, he expressed his position, and then he just walked away with this huge, great Declan Rice smile on his face. He said, "Well, you are right." And I like that about him. I like the fact that he just engages one-on-one. The fact that he's prepared to call me out. I like that with players if he thinks I've done something wrong. I like that interaction. And I'm just a journalist who sees him maybe bumps into him every other month with England or whatever. And you just think if you're working at London Colney and you've got Declan Rice coming in, he lights up your day. The sun comes out because he's one of those really, you just immediately warm to him because of his character. And as a footballer, he's exactly what Arsenal needed because he's a leader. He doesn't need the armband. He's just got that personality. And it's great to see him. I mean, risk of sounding like the opposition manager, I did think there was a foul in the build-up, but I just thought he took his goal well. And the fact is that Arsenal obviously working to get him into areas and to get him that shot and goal. So, and the thing about Mikel Arteta, and this was something that Eddie Nketiah was alluding to the other days, players really develop under him. And Declan Rice knows that in the next 2-3 years, he is going to turn into an absolute stellar, probably world-class talent because of his development, because of the coaching of Mikel Arteta.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there are players who kind of come across as being talented, but a little brash, a little arrogant, little self-involved with themselves. And without having any reason to say this other than just, quick perception, I would have put Jack Grealish in that category. He just seemed a little more like a pretty boy and again, this is just like completely uneducated, but Declan comes across the complete opposite to me. And I'm sure you'll tell me I'm wrong about Grealish, but.
Well, you're definitely right about Declan Rice, but Jack Grealish is one of the funniest, most down-to-earth, genuine guys. Genuine guys you can meet. I mean, just because, someone has a bit of a lifestyle and enjoys
Maybe
life.
it's just the hair. Maybe it was just the hair I was going,
Yeah. He's hilarious. He's got an absolute brilliant sense of humor. And what you often don't see, I mean, okay, the cameras pick up on it occasionally of players going over and giving their shirts. Players do that all the time. I mean, if you go to, you've only got to go any event behind the scenes and you just see how much work they do, whether it's making phone calls to six kids, whether it's hospital visits, they just do that. And Grealish and Declan Rice just do something. I mean, I did a couple of community pieces with Declan Rice at West Ham, and his heart and soul, you can tell when someone's a little bit of fraud and is going through the motions and there's almost reading a club script on why they're attached to this good cause. Declan Rice is genuine.
I love it. And we're going to talk in just a minute, in case anyone was wondering, about the Arsenal Supporters Trust. There's a great reason to talk about that, and also a connection to our both of our guests that are here, of course. But the other thing I wanted to talk to you about before that, someone else who I recall watching in the players' tunnel on TV, messing around with his hair and looking like he was all concerned about things, and I laughed about it at the point. But now we're talking about him for a completely different reason, and that's Jordan Henderson. You were very strong in your words about Jordan Henderson recently. You used some harsh words, which I tend to agree with, about his recent kind of escapist maybe comments about his move to the Saudi Pro League. And in case anyone missed that, can you kind of fill us in on the gist of what he said, why he came out with those comments in the first place, and your take on the issue?
He did an interview in The Athletic in which he said that he wasn't going over there for the money. He was going over there because he wanted to help develop the game, which I don't think anyone was really going to buy. So obviously going over to Saudi. So there are three elements to it. First, I don't buy that. So just be honest and say you're going for the money because you want to set up, the next 10 generations of Hendersons. At least I think people would respect your honesty in saying that, if not completely understand your initial motive in the first place. But then the hypocrisy of having stood shoulder to shoulder with the gay community, worn the rainbow armband, worn the rainbow laces, and I genuinely believe he felt genuinely about that. But then to go to Qatar, I think Jill Scott was talking about it on Channel 4 last night. She feels let down by him because she wouldn't be welcome in the country where he's now playing. And a third reason, football, if I can bring football into so many other issues that we always talk about, I don't think the standard of that league, even with the influx of the talent that we've seen, Benzema, Ronaldo, players like that, Ruben Neves, 26-year-old going there, which is an interesting development. I just don't think he's going to be in peak condition to compete against the French midfield in the Euros. And I think Portugal have got 3 players there, so it might the standard might sort of improve a bit. But I think they're increasingly sound footballing reasons to leave him out the England squad. And I think going to Saudi might accelerate that process.
Would he have been better off just not giving the interview in the first place? And I mean,
he had to. I think he had to address it at some point. I've got no problem with that. But if he really wanted to develop the game, and it was all about putting something back into the game, then go to Sunderland. He started out there. Sunderland as a team. He could go back to his boyhood club. What a fantastic thing to do, to have, that's field of dream stuff. So taking them, up it back into the Premier League. I think if he'd done that, his reputation would be even more enhanced, because Jordan Henderson is a good guy, but I just think this has just damaged his reputation. I mean, I did pieces with him, as a lot of people did, during lockdown when he was doing players together, and you would talk to captains of other teams, and they would say, Jordan Henderson is an absolute machine trying to get all this money raised for the NHS. And one of them rang him and just to sort of sort out how they could get their club, their Premier League club, to sort of generate money to go into this fund. And Jordan Henderson was at home, high speed on the running machine, but he had his sort of pods in. And he was just doing that. And that sort of sums Henderson up. Commitment to his profession, commitment to helping the NHS. His cousin, frontline nurse at Sunderland Royal Infirmary, or the main hospital there. So I think that was all genuine, which in a way, when you put yourself up there genuinely to support the causes, back the NHS, back the gay community, and then particularly from the gay community, they must feel so let down by him.
Yeah, I would imagine. And yeah, I mean, it's not like he's some sort of pantomime villain or awful person or anything like that. I mean, people have said what they've said about Cristiano Ronaldo for years, and much of it probably isn't true, but he's always kind of been the villain card. I don't think it surprised anybody when he was the first guy to go over for big money to Saudi Arabia, and it just kind of fit with Jordan Henderson. It's stark in the fact that it doesn't fit. Akhil, was that you raising your hand to come in?
No, so it's just me flicking something away. But no, just on that, I mean, I think with Cristiano, I just think he had such a fall from grace in that year or two that probably there was no European club that wanted to touch him, because I reckon he would have loved another Ballon d'Or or two. But there was just probably nobody that wanted to touch him. I was going to say that obviously, you guys were there. We had Bakary Sagna at AST 20, which was our 20-year anniversary, and he was asked about it, wasn't he? And he was very honest and said it's obviously for the money, but there was something that he said that kind of has stayed with me, and he said, like, if he had his time again, would he go? And he said if it was towards the end of his career, he probably would, purely because he can then build schools, build hospitals, build all this kind of stuff in his local villages and his local town and stuff like that. Which just makes me think that, will we see potentially players like, if Samuel was here, then, certainly kind of the African players who we know, there's been the likes of Drogba, Essien, who have done lots and lots for their community back home. We've had Kanu, who has done lots and lots. So it's kind of a sense of, will players like that potentially want to go there just to help their hometowns? I just think it's an interesting dimension because, I think Samuel was trying to say people aren't looking at Saudi for Saudi, they're looking at what can they potentially do in their own hometown, which is a different take. I'm not saying Jordan Henderson looking at that, by the way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, and you watch a lot of the Saudi Pro League, I know, right? I mean, you watch the second division games.
Oh yeah, huge fan. Al,
Yeah.
one of the Als, just a big Al fan.
Yeah, I mean it's like being a City fan. Well, which one? City. But the quality of the football, and you look at the starting 11s, and there's 3 players whose names jump out at you, sometimes 4, and then the rest are everybody's got to start somewhere. If you're building a league to be, I mean, if you believe that they're building a league to try to be competitive amongst all the top leagues in the world, it takes time. But you also have you have to build from the bottom and the top, not just the top. Trickle down soccernomics or footballnomics isn't necessarily gonna lead to competition. But what do you make of the whole kind of competitive landscape of that? Do you think this is a stunt like it was in like it ultimately turned out to be in China?
One thing about just one thing about Saudi is that they are a pretty committed football country.
Yeah.
Because of the age, and was it sort of 3/4 of the country below the age of 30? It's a very youthful country. I mean, I covered Saudi Arabia, Belgium in Washington DC in '94, and I was at the Independent at the time, and they said, well, probably nothing will happen, but just go and cover it just in case there is. And then Said Aware, the Saudi Arabian player, picked up the ball and sort of dribbled through the Belgian defence and slipped the ball past Podathon. And you saw Saudi and their supporters in Qatar. Okay, it was an easy journey for them to make, but they're bigger roots, shall we say, in Saudi. So I wouldn't sort of dismiss them like that. And look, my brother's an imam, so I've been through sort of certainly parts of the Quran trying to understand it, and there's a lot. There are bits I don't agree with, and that's maybe sort of influencing some of my sort of thoughts on what Jordan Henderson's done. But then you look at the reaction to the Saudis taking over Newcastle United, whenever it was 2 years ago, it was back page. If there were questions in the house, now if there was a similar takeover by the Saudis of an English club, I don't think there would be such heat. So it is. But I'm just not personally, but I'm just disappointed with Jordan Henderson because I thought he was above that.
Yeah. All right. Well,
it's I think the second part of what football is evolving into is that players like and I've got my own issues with him as a character, not a footballer, but when we're holding Kylian Mbappe up as the poster boy for morality in modern day football, we know things have maybe taken a wrong turn. The powerhouse that football, European football in particular, is a joke without a country, a nation state coming in and throwing buckets of cash, endless buckets of cash. Back to your question, is this a stunt like China? I don't think so, because it's too sustained, it's too targeted. I think what they're trying to do is bring some eyes before maybe trying to develop the infrastructure at the bottom to have that trickle effect of players coming in. Jordan Henderson in particular, I think the thing that hurts is if you were to look at a certain type of player, let's say Alan St-Maximin. I don't know him as a player, but as a character, you can tell the type of person that he is. But with Jordan Henderson, it seems so out of character. And I know what Akhil was saying about players like Oscar from Brazil, who has sustained an entire village that he grew up in with the money that he earned from that move to China. Players like Didier Drogba, who built hospitals back in his homeland. But I'm not sure Jordan Henderson's going to be going back to Sunderland and throwing up hospitals all over the place. I'm just not sure that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So it hurts more because he seems like such a man of the people and somebody who was, as you said, on the sort of good guy side of the game. When you look at his midfield partner, James Milner, you'd say he made probably the more moral move to end his career than to do what Jordan Henderson did.
Yeah,
totally agree.
So let's make sure that we talk about a very important element of this, and frankly, the reason that the four of us are all sitting here together, specifically my introduction to Henry Winter, that came last month at a pretty amazing event an event that was the brainchild and the plan child, I'm making that a word, of our very own Akhil here. First of all, congratulations on Arsenal Supporter Trust 20th anniversary and the 20th anniversary event. From my perspective, it was an event that went off without a hitch. And if there were hitches that were happening, they certainly weren't apparent to anybody. But please, if you would share with us, anyone who doesn't know, a little bit about the Arsenal Supporters Trust in general, your history, your mission, your evolution, your impact, and then we'll talk about the event at the Emirates last month, which was fantastic.
Sure, yeah, of course, thank you. Thanks for the platform as well. So, I mean, the AST Arsenal Supporters Trust started in 2003, obviously, 20 years. And it started, it was a way of representing sort of supporters and fans, but from a shareholder perspective. So at that time, it's not how it is now. There weren't many owners, single owners of football clubs. It was shareholdings. So Arsenal had a couple. Danny Fisman was sort of the biggest, and then actually the Arsenal Supporters Trust were actually the third biggest at one particular time, by basically getting minority shareholders all together as part of the Supporters Trust. So they had, 7% at one stage. Arsenal Supporters Trust themselves had shares in Arsenal, and it gave them a voice. Ultimately, gave them a voice. From having one share to having 7% collectively, you had more of a voice. At that time, it was very different. You could probably, the AST would have a coffee with David Dean probably every month or so. Would meet directors, Keith Elderman. These are people Henry would have come and seen a lot of, and I think Henry will tell you too. They were a lot more approachable at the time, and maybe football was like that. Football was approachable, but that kind of continued, and obviously that was when Arsenal were having their most successful part. It was the year before the Invincibles, so on the pitch there was kind of nothing to really worry about. But off the field there was lots going on. We were seeing, Roman Abramovich come in. We obviously saw Man City a few years later. We had the move to the Emirates. We had all that self-sustainability model and stuff like that. So there was certainly a need for a supporters group, a supporters trust. The AST is a registered society, so basically registered to the government. We give our accounts into Companies House. We're a demographic society, so everyone who's a member has one vote. And that could be on anything. I remember one of the hardest things I've personally ever had to do was when we had to survey, and we generally stay. The Arsenal Sports Trust is predominantly off the field. It's about ticketing, safe standing, crowd engagement, all that kind of stuff. We'll never say if Kai Havertz should play or Thomas Partey should play right back. But
I just got the Survey Monkey email about whether Gabriel should have come back in the back four from the Arsenal Trust. That wasn't you?
Exactly. You missed that one. but the biggest thing we had to do, because our members were talking about it, was unfortunately Arsene Wenger. It came after many years, and I remember that was one of the biggest votes we did. We asked our members, what do you think is sort of should move on, stay? Well, and I remember I had to go on Sky Sports News and pretty much say 78% of AST members think it's time for him to move on. And someone who, if you look at my back, I've got loads of Arsene Wenger memorabilia and all sorts, and I've met the man many times, and it was hard. It was hard, but that's what representing a trust is about. It's not about what I feel, it's about what our members feel, and that's the whole point of one vote. So that's kind of how we are. We've evolved over time, because obviously Arsenal now is owned by one person or one company. All those shareholders were unfortunately compulsory purchased out, so we didn't have a choice ultimately. We had to sell our shares after Mr. Usmanov sold his, and ultimately, the Arsenal Sports Trust doesn't own shares anymore, but it's still a powerful voice. I think we saw that in the Super League, where we were pretty much everywhere, from all over the news to meetings with the Prime Minister to supporting this whole football regulator, which if it comes in will be absolutely massive. So
to a conference call with Josh Kroenke where you you made yourself a little famous, I think.
Conference call with Josh, and but that's the thing. That's kind of what we do, and we're still there. We'll still sort of support family. At the moment, there's lots around ticketing and stuff like that, which we're working on with the club. We'll always be there to try and represent fans the best we can. Very difficult, because you can ask 50 fans a question, they'll all come with different answers. But that's our job. So we've evolved over the time, but absolutely still there.
Yeah, and the importance of the supporters trust is incredible. I mean, whether you are, I mean, you're independent of the club, of course. You have to work with the club. It's important to have good relationships with the club. I can tell you, and perhaps this had much to do with the fact of where this event was located. But there was a lot of club representation there, from levels all the way as high as Vinay, Venkatesham, to Kate, to Mark and the supporters liaison, to Stu, and just really, really good. It was a very, very nice evening, because and I know it was a bit more celebratory than the normal AST meeting would be. It was a little less about policy and more about enjoyment, and I get that. But it was just a really, really special event that we were fortunate enough to be in town for. And I
wanted to... the club have always been supportive over stuff like that. They've always, we've always tried to have them at the Emirates, because we feel we should. That's our home ground. That's where people love to visit. And credit to Vinay, he's been to pretty much all of our events there. We do an event every year. We raise money for the foundation and stuff like that as
Absolutely.
well. But those events are huge for us, and we absolutely get a good turnout. We obviously had the Community Shield there, which was quite nice as well, having only won it at Wembley two days before. So we do lots of that. We also do virtual stuff as well, for overseas members, because Arsenal's global now. It's not just a club in North London. It is all over the world, and I saw that when I came to America. Obviously spent a bit of time with you, Mike, and Washington and New York. It was just amazing. I think I've talked to you, Henry, about this as well. That just to see the levels of passion and support in those stadiums, in those pubs, in those, having conversations with people who just have the same knowledge as you. I'll be honest. When I went there, I thought there'll be fans, but I thought it would be a little bit like me liking the Golden State Warriors, for example. Yeah, I watch it every so often when I can, but it's kind of like, but no, these people had the same knowledge as I had. They had that. They were asking the same questions. They were as obsessed as anyone about signings and stuff like that. And it just really opened my eyes to how global Arsenal is. And thankfully, we sort of have known that with the Supporters Trust, and we've obviously worked hard to make sure our overseas members get value too.
Well, thank you for making it accessible to people. I mean, and tell us how you can join. And again, if you thought it was something that you kind of had to be living in N5 or N7 to participate in, it is far from that. I've got my Arsenal Supporters Trust card, and you should as well. So tell us how someone could get involved.
Very simple. Just go to Arsenal Trust. It's just arsenaltrust.org. ORG, and you can sign up. It's about £20 UK a year, less than £2 a month. There you go, and people can just join up, and you can attend our virtual events if you're not here. But sometimes if you might like Mike, you might happen to be in London when we have an event on, which is even better. So I know you've made a few of them in the past as well. So absolutely join and have a voice.
Yep, it was fantastic, and if you don't mind, I'm going to play a edited version of a certain video that was taken that night that talks about the impact of the Arsenal Supporters Trust, and I've edited it for length, and also just because the two people that I've edited down to, I mean, you can't find two better people to talk about the Arsenal Supporters Trust.
I think I can guess. Yeah, one was wearing a blue suit, and one was you.
Yeah. Here we go.
One of the things that's most important to me is keeping a close relationship with the club. And being able to be a part of these kinds of events, and I know that the AST has evolved and it's grown and it's changed with the differing ownership of our club, but to be able to come to events like this when I'm over keeps me connected to this club, and that's the thing that's most important to me.
Supporters groups like the Arsenal Supporters Trust, and congratulations on your 20th birthday, are so important for the game, because without you and other supporters groups, the game wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in a job. the pyramid would be dead. Because it was 2 years ago, just outside there, that you and your fans were protesting before the Everton game about the European Super League, which would have killed English football, which would have destroyed the pyramid, which would actually have unpicked a lot of the fabric of society. So it's vital. You're the early warning system, the first line of defence for some of the charlatans who want to come in and ruin our game.
Charlatans, Henry.
Yeah, my favourite band. Yeah, the music was so good. I thought, yeah, they're big football fans. I mean, it's.
Was that the only one I? Is that the Charlatans?
Yeah, they're great. He's brilliant. I had to off piece, but I had to do some DJing bizarrely in the Royal Albert Hall. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but he was there, Tim from the Charlatans. So he said, "You press that button there and put your headphones on and just sort of sway gently from side to side." Anyway, but look, what Akhil does with the Arsenal Supporters Trust is absolutely huge, and the Supporters Trusts across the country, in some shape or form, there's one at every 92 clubs, and you are the early warning system. And because there are charlatans, call them what you like, who come into the game. And I think with the governance improving with an independent regulator coming in, particularly if it's a top KC, we don't want a political appointment. We want someone who is going to come in and actually stand up to some of the owners, to some of the broadcasters, to the Premier League at times, because they are basically taking the mickey out of fans. With Akhil mentioned it, with changing kickoff times at the last moments, the situation with travel in this system. I mean, I live in Peterborough and I get the 23:33 train north, which is the last one north out of King's Cross. It's quite lively. It's known as the Vomit Comet even. And it is, but we just don't, the country isn't actually set up properly for all these, for football matches. So that, and you know what we're going to get? We're going to get an Apple are going to come in. There's going to be a streaming company that's going to come in, and matches going to be scattered all over the place. And you think you've got issues with kickoff times at the moment, you wait 2-3 years time, next television deal, maybe the one after that, it'll be an issue. So that's why the Supporters Trusts are so important. My only criticism of the Supporters Trust is that, and this is just a reflection on the inevitable tribal nature of club football in this country, is that they don't work more together. I know Akhil sort of occasionally works with other clubs, and it was brilliant over the European Super League. But I think collectively, like the German fans, and I'm not lecturing the Supporters Trust because they do brilliant jobs individually, but collectively, via the Football Supporters Association, we can stand up to kickoff changes, escalating costs. These things have to be set up to, because it's not my game. It's not Stan Kroenke's game. It's your game.
Well put. Well put. So a couple of quick things we want to do before we get you guys out at the top of the hour, and we'll bring in our next guest for a brief crossover. I'm sure everyone will want to say hi to each other. But at the end of each segment, we do a 4-question segment. For Henry, it's going to be 3 questions because I'm not even going to ask him to answer one of them. The 4 questions are your top 6. And if you want to choose other ones not to answer, that's also fine. But your top 6 in no particular order. The one that I won't ask you is your Ballon d'Or winner, the first coach to get sacked this season, and one surprising thing that you might not have expected to happen that you believe will happen in this what do we call it, season.
Top 6.
How many of those are you comfortable answering, Henry?
I'll ask what you want. I can't touch Ballon d'Or. I'll go with what I went at the start of the season: City, Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool. I just think Potts might get Chelsea going, and then Spurs and Chelsea in those 2 there. I haven't got Newcastle in there, which is probably a bit harsh. Those top 4, I'm fairly okay with. Sorry, what was your next one?
First manager to get sacked.
God, that's, what, I absolutely hate it when bookies do this, the sack race, because I've seen the human cost and the bruised pride. Okay, there's nice payoffs and all that behind it, but I don't want to see anyone sacked. I think we've got a good collection of managers at the moment. I think they're all I mean, you look at Sean Dyche at Everton, and he's in there fighting, even though the results haven't been great. He's a good guy. He's fighting against the odds. Everyone thinks they've got issues with owners, but Everton are just, great club, similar to history with Arsenal, certainly going back a while. No, I don't. I won't do that. What was your third question?
Something that you think would surprise people if you predicted it now for world football this season. Just like either unpopular opinion of something that'll happen or something.
I think the rarest thing that will happen this week, and the most unlikely, it's the biggest surprise this season, is that we could get through a weekend without moaning about VAR. I just think that I understand why technology is here, and I've been a sort of advocate of it ever since I was in the Stade de France. And with great respect to Thierry Henry, I saw what happened to the Irish, Gallas as well. But I just think maybe if we invest some of the, was it 2.3 billion in the transfer window, maybe even we, invested a 0.1% into the quality of refereeing, that might actually then subsequently improve the usage of VAR. But anyway, I mean, that's absolute fantasy to suggest we might get through a weekend with.
Owen, did that cut really close to you when he brought up the Thierry Henry thing? I mean, you're Northern Irish though, so come on.
No, it's actually just. Oh, geez, that's a touchy subject that we'll not get into right now. That's a podcast within itself, but it's just nice to hear somebody acknowledge that handball that everybody seems to overlook. Especially as an Arsenal fan, an Irish Arsenal fan, you can't really blaspheme Thierry Henry. It isn't received too well.
That's
true. Do you know the Irish were so good and non-complaining that night. If it had been another country, can you imagine in the Spanish? Can you imagine in the English? I would have been petitioning number 10, let alone UEFA from FIFA. You handled it very maturely. Maybe if you stamped your feet a bit more.
Yeah, Akhil.
Maybe so. I got to say that's true. I mean, we're still talking about Frank Lampard's goal, aren't we? Against Germany. 2-2 Lampard scores. It's a different game, and we're still talking about that now. And that was very different. It wasn't as blatant as the Henry handball.
No, well, it wasn't intentional. It was just a really bad call. Top six, Akhil?
Top six. No particular order. Well, no.
No particular order.
No particular order for 1 and 2. City, Arsenal, City. Got Liverpool, Man United. Got Spurs getting in there, and the 6th place is going to be Brighton above Chelsea.
Yeah, that's
Brighton started well. Of course, they'll run out of legs at some point. They'll probably even with Europe struggle, but I think they're a quality side.
They got with a great coach. Ballon d'Or winner.
It's going to be Haaland, isn't it? Kind of it sort of has to be Haaland, really. It's we've lost those two, so it's kind of opened up again. I think Mbappe's obviously got a chance, but I think it'll be Haaland
all right.
Season.
First coach to get the sack.
Yeah, like Henry as well. I hate talk about anyone getting the sack from any sort of job. I guess when you're sort of paid a lot more than I am, and when you're likely to get another job sooner, it makes it a little bit easier. But I got to say, I sort of don't want to say it because that's our next game. But obviously, Everton look like they're in trouble. Sean Dyche looks like he's in trouble. But of course, we went to Goodison last season when they just hired Sean Dyche, and
he was the new manager bounce against us, and it
was a manager bounce. It was an early kickoff, and they just jumped on us really, and scored a goal from a set piece that was from the training ground. So, he's obviously a good manager, but I just think Everton are struggling. But I just don't want to say too much because we've got them in a week.
Yeah, that game ruined Gooner for everybody. And your out of left field prediction for the year in football?
It's kind of this time next year. So It's going to be when Henry Winter's doing his vote for Ballon d'Or this time next year, he's going to vote for Martin Odegaard because Martin Odegaard is going to have a stunning season. Hopefully, be the captain to win to lift the trophy, lift the league, and everyone's looking at Saka, rightly so, But I really think Martin Odegaard, not just as a player, but I think as a leader, has developed. You know, he captains his country at a young age. He's captain Erling Haaland. You know, he's captain the kind of the personality that is Haaland, and he's done it really well. He's done really well at Arsenal. I think there was a question about actually Odegaard's kind of sort of contract, and will that mean Declan Rice potentially won't be captain anytime soon? Well, Arsenal have many captains. You know, Martin Odegaard wears a captain's armband, but anybody that goes to games would have seen last year that it was always Granit Xhaka leading the sort of, when they did their little thing, just as North London forever was playing, Angel was playing, it was always Granit that was doing the team talk. Declan will probably do that at times as well, but Martin Odegaard, believe me, is going to have a great season.
Absolutely. So he was basically kind of making a little passive-aggressive suggestion and trying to get, just planting the seeds for what your vote should be in 12 or 13 months from now. All right, so the final thing we're going to do is pick our winner of this hour's prize. And this hour we are giving away a Lee Dixon signed retro kit. This is one of the big ones. So we are giving that away now to one of our donors who have donated over $9,500 to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society through Gooners versus Cancer. Before we do that, I'm just going to bring in our guest for the next hour, and then right after that, I'll bring in our co-host for the next hour. But Ryan Rocastle, it's fantastic to see you again. It's been a while. Ryan, have you met Akhil or Henry yet?
I've met them both. I'm very lucky to have met them both. So
hi, Ryan. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Henry.
Me and Ryan had a great trip to Cologne about 3-4 years ago. Might have been under Unai, but it certainly wasn't under. And it was I took Ryan under my wing for the night, and he got back to his hotel at about 4 a.m. After many gin and cokes and Jaeger bombs. It was a great night, wasn't it, Ryan?
It was very fun night. Yeah.
That sounds Henry like what we're going to be doing in Sevilla next month, right? Right, Akhil?
Yeah. I have to say, Henry was main reason I got a good mark in my dissertation at university, because I got to interview him. I was very, very fortunate, and I always appreciate that, Henry. So thank you.
Oh, pleasure. It was great to see you doing so well.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that there was that history there. And then, of course, from the Gooners Podcast, joining us as well, Aston will be joining us for the next hour with Ryan. So before we get you, Akhil and Henry, let's share the screen here and do the random drawing for the Lee Dixon signed retro shirt. Now, when Gooners versus Cancer gives away signed shirts, it isn't just a signed shirt with the guy's name on it. It is a personalized shirt. So once we finish all of our auctions at the end of the year, we will ask Lee Dixon, we'll ask you, the winner, what you want Lee Dixon to write on the shirt. And he has been quite accommodating with the messages. I mean, it's got to be reasonable, but so you're not only getting a signed shirt, you're getting a signed shirt with the message that you want. And it's any of the retro shirts that are sold at the Armory. So the 89 home and away, the 91 home, you can win. So the winner of the Lee Dixon signed shirt, and there's one person whose name comes up who's already won a prize, actually, but it's not a shirt, so never mind. Whoever wins this gets the shirt, and it is Jordan Whidden. Jordan Whidden, I know he's from the States. Jordan is from Frisco, Texas. So congratulations, Jordan, on your win of a Lee Dixon signed jersey, and I will get with you as to which one you want and what you want written on the back of it. And folks, that is the end of hour 6, and our grand total right now for funds raised.
Before I go, I was just looking around to see, is there anything I can quickly donate? And I've just found that we have one last David Dein autobiography signed by David Dein. Now, obviously, with the AST being 20 years, David Dein was a massive part of the AST starting, because he was obviously a director at that time. So if you want to add this to your list, you can do. As I said, it's signed by David. And it's a really good book, certainly the early parts around the Invincible season and stuff like that. And it's obviously,
let's draw for it right now. You mind if we draw for it right now? All right, that's fair. And thank you so much.
If you give me the winner's name, yeah.
I love the way that Akhil said the good part was the bit that I didn't write. I wrote the non-Arsenal part. So thanks, Akhil.
Yeah, well,
Amy Lawrence wrote the really good Arsenal bits.
That's fantastic.
The England bit's great as well. It's just secondary.
Very secondary.
We're not giving away the vote for the. I don't mean giving away your vote. I mean giving away the opportunity to vote for you. But no, we're not going to do that. All right. So the winner of the David Dean book in a special bonus drawing, Mark Goldsmith. Congratulations, Mark. Mark is from Stanmore, England, HA7.
That's a local.
So yeah, Mark, that'll be some easy shipping. So Mark, thank you so much. Oh, I forgot I wasn't sharing my screen, was I, when I drew that? You're gonna just have to take my word.
We trust you. We trust you.
Professional.
Who could come up with a name like Mark Goldsmith? I mean, it's so original. No, so thank you, Mark, and thank you, Akhil, and thank you, Henry, for joining us. I truly appreciate it. We hope to have another chat sometime again soon. If I haven't, run you off from trusting me to ask normal questions, but thank you for your support of the cause and for being on for this hour with us.
Well, it's brilliant cause. That's fantastic what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Keep up the good work and have a next good couple of hours. Good luck, right?
Beautiful. All right, well, take care, guys. We'll see you later.
Hey, Gooners. This is Alan Smith.
This is Kevin Campbell.
Lee Dixon.
Colin Lewin.
It's Gary Lewin.
Charles Watts.
Dan Potts. James Benge.
Stanley.
Tom from the Gooner Talk here.
Simon Collins, you may know me from the Evening Standard.
You may know me for my time at Arsenal.
You may know me from Arsenal or even the hybrid squad.
Cat Wonderland.
Being that physio sat on the bench next to Arsenal with my rubber gloves on.
The former Arsenal physio.
The Emirates press box, from writing, from Twitter.
From goal.com, from Twitter, from YouTube.
Football is the beautiful game and it brings us all together.
Sometimes there are things even more important than wins and losses.
And yes, even transfers.
Every 30 seconds, someone in this world gets diagnosed with blood cancer.
The Leukemia and Lymphoma Society works towards curing blood cancers
and provides support to families currently dealing with these diseases.
Gooners vs Cancer was started in 2017
by a lifelong Gooner who lost his father to leukemia way too young.
Since 2017, Gooners v Cancer has raised
over $75,000 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
And we need your help to keep the fundraising going in this year's campaign.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
No matter the size.
And every donation enters you into the Gooner raffle,
where you have a great chance to win amazing Arsenal prizes,
including game tickets, stadium tours,
signed men and women's shirts,
and maybe a retro signed shirt by yours truly, Lee Dixon.
Me, yours truly.
Yours truly, Super Kev Campbell.
So much more.
It's easy to take part.
Just go to www.goonersvcancer.com
and donate directly to the charity.
Pick the raffle prizes you want to enter to win,
and wait for the drawings at the end of the campaign.
Again, that's www.goonersversuscancer.com.
We all know that victory grows out of harmony.
Victory grows out of harmony.
Victory grows out of harmony.
With your help, we'll be victorious against blood cancer once and for all.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for your support.
Thanks for your support.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you for your support.